Hi, this is Eva for Once Upon a Timeline. Welcome, everybody. All right, let's see who's in. It's me, Sia, Preliminal, Miss Imaginary, Art Generica, Pugsley Lovejoy, Michael Fontaine, who apparently named his second child's middle name after me. I have to say, I am very shocked and also very honored. I was just reading that before I went live, and I have to say, this is the second person that said they named a child after me in some way, and the first one was, I mean, I don't know what to say, but thank you. I hope the child turns out better than me. I'm sure with good parents they will, though. But let's see. Okay, who else is in here? Jonar Games, Heart's Truth, Shari D, welcome, welcome. Phil Cantu. Let's see, I don't think I read the whole rest, so I'm just kind of scanning through as I welcome everybody. Zebulon 8, Matthew Kyle. I think that's everybody. I didn't get my stream up, my stream notification up real early today again, so. Great catch, you, your sweetheart. Dunky Dwayne. I don't know who they're referring to. Consciousness of Steel. Dum dum dum. Good job, good job. All right, so I'm just gonna do a little world news. I don't actually have a lot. I don't. Let me know if I missed anything major. It seemed like it's just the usual baloney this week. California is still like a sloth when it comes to opening up. He let like clothing stores do curbside pickup. I mean, like, really? That's like such a huge opening. I'm sure a whole lot of people go to clothing stores and can't see the clothes and can't try them on, but are still going to buy them on curbside pickup. Ridiculous. Okay, so no real word on when we're going to have any real opening in California. Just lately, though, he did say that local places can go at their own pace, but then he's got a whole bunch of rules that they're supposed to meet, and then they're supposed to ask permission. So it's not really like they're going at their own pace because they have to jump through all these hoops that the governor put forth. So they're not going at their own pace. They're going at the governor's pace. Anyway, just a lot of baloney. But I saw this on another channel, and I was just laughing because let's see if I got it. Okay, so there's like a comparison between the 911 event and then the C, and I was kind of laughing because they were comparing this like risk threat thing, and this was the one from the 911. And then if you look at the one for the C, it's like the same thing. I mean, it's the exact same colors, um, the same order, top to bottom, blah blah blah. I don't know. It's funny. Okay, this one is for the UK, but there's a lot of similar ones like this. And look, it's like the exact same colors and everything. Somebody was comparing them, and I can't find it now, but lots of suspicious money laundering, and you can see that with the vaccines. There's so many people that are benefiting by this new vaccine, including Fauci, I might add. He has ties as well to the new vaccine. So there's there's a lot of weird stuff, and I wish I had that. But another one was all new surveillance being put into place, of course. And once these things are put into place, they're never taken down. I mean, all of those things that they put up for 911 is still here. And I bet you all this surveillance and all this contact tracing, everything, I doubt that's going to go away. They're already talking about, well, this isn't the first pandemic, and there'll probably be more. And they're already like brainwashing people to expect there'd be like pandemic after pandemic now, according to the news. Anyway, I call baloney on that, but I don't have a lot to say. Did I miss anything exciting this week? Let me know. Yeah. What is the use of a curfew? That virus more active at night? Yeah, exactly. I've talked about that in the past. Eva, my second favorite YouTuber. Who's the first favorite YouTuber? Now I want to go see that person. Has anybody tested for the CV? I'm not testing for it. I don't know. It doesn't seem like there would be that much harm in the test, but just to be on the safe side, I'm not having anything to do with it. The more they push everybody to do it for no apparent reason, the more I don't want to do it. Like maybe there's something I'm missing, so I'm not going to. The curfew here is back from 8 to 6. Seriously? I just got an alert on my phone that Fresno, now you have to wear a mask anytime you're at work, in the public, or anywhere. Basically, it sounded like if you're not in your car or at home, you have to wear a mask. Because in San Diego, as long as you can maintain 6 foot distance, you don't have to wear the mask. I noticed it's weird though. People will be out and there won't be anybody for like 10 blocks. It'll be late at night and they'll be wearing a mask. I'm like, who are you going to get the C from out here where there's nobody at late at night? It's strange. I mean, I could see, and maybe in the winter when it's cold, it might be kind of comfy to wear that thing, but yeah, I don't know. I was kind of talking to somebody about it, and the government really doesn't have the authority to do a lot of this stuff, but locally, they've scared the businesses into doing it. The businesses are probably afraid that they'll have liability issues if they don't enforce these rules. So any time you want to go inside a store, you have to put a mask on. But then the government doesn't have to enforce that now because it becomes a private property issue. So it's kind of an interesting little twist. So if they're making curfews in other places, though, I don't know, that like Fresno, it's like, it's weird because the virus is getting less and less, but yet they're ramping up this stuff, more and more mask wearing. Yet when we were terrified of Jonar Games, is it Eva or Ewa? It's Eva, EVA, Eva. The first month when they were all terrified of everybody dying, they said no mask. And now when the curve is flattened and it's going down, now all of a sudden they're cranking up on the mask thing, and none of it really makes any sense. New York doesn't have enough tests. Well, I don't know. What are they testing for? I mean, what do you think? Now they're talking about unless they can get rid of the virus, we can't go back to normal. The virus is already in like 5, 10, 15% of the population, depending where you're at, assuming that any of their data is accurate. You're not going to get rid of it. You're not going to contact trace it out of existence. I mean, it's everywhere. A lot of people have already had it. It's all over the place. You're not going to get rid of it. The original story was we were just going to flatten the curve a little so the hospitals didn't get overwhelmed. And now all of a sudden, nobody can do anything until they get rid of it. It's everywhere. It's like getting rid of the flu. You can't get rid of the flu. I don't get it. Like polio and all these other deadly diseases. More people have died from car accidents than they've died from COVID. Do they say that we can't drive until we cut the number of car accidents in half? I mean, it just doesn't really make any sense to me. I mean, if this was Ebola or something, I'd be on board with all this baloney, but it's not. Your cat is my favorite YouTuber. I hope your cat, whose name I forget, is happy. Yes, he is doing well. His name is difficult to say. It's, I didn't really take it seriously when he showed up, so I called him Fafnir. And so his name is Fafnir. And that is like this dragon from Old Norse mythology. Fafnir is the son of the dwarf king Hreidmar and brother of Regin. He gets all greedy and then he gets turned into a dragon. We call them that because there's this saying in the UK called like faffing about. And we have this friend from UK who was like always saying the cat is faffing about. So he got like half of his name is from faffing and then Fafnir. So yeah, nobody can remember it but me, I guess. But so that is Kitty. Have to wear a mask here for a while around any people, like stores, drive-thrus, and if outside and other people are around, but not if you're outside by yourself. Yeah, they said here 6 foot. If you can't maintain a 6 foot distance, then you should wear the mask. I think it's interesting though that they're kind of pushing them at the same time on the news, and a lot of people are kind of conflating them so that they think you have to wear a mask and maintain 6 foot distance, when really it's supposed to be that if you can't maintain the 6 foot distance, then you wear the mask. But it's like the way they're portraying it on TV, a lot of people are getting confused and think you have to do it all, and that's not what the law really says, but the media is kind of aiding in that confusion. I do love a bit of faffing. Yeah. Well, cats, that's all they do all day is faff a boot. So, if there are two in a car, they have to wear a mask, otherwise, big fine. Seriously, what if you live in the same house? That's stupid. It's just like, oh my, it's just getting dumber and dumber. There can't be more than 3 people in the car here. Oh, seriously? I did hear that they were saying that if you carpool, you're supposed to all wear a mask. Oh man, Jay, Bucky, your joke, I'm not repeating it, but you guys can all read it. That'll be the new, we have the millennials, and then they'll be the quarantine generation, that they'll be all from the quarantine. All the kids that are born next year. Like 1,800 schools are not reopening in the UK against reopening suggestions. Yeah, people are afraid, and then businesses are afraid of liability. So they kind of push this liability thing on, and they've said that businesses could be responsible, but they're not really giving that good of guidelines on what to do. I don't see how restaurants are going to make it at 25 to 50% of capacity in the building either. I just don't see how many businesses could turn a profit that way. I was tested today for my work. Someone tested positive, so health department did it. Well, hopefully you'll test negative. I just, there hasn't been any testing on the test. So, I mean, I've checked into PCR, and other PCR tests have quite a few false positives. Like I've seen like 90% accuracy. So that means if you test 10 people, one of them might be a false positive. That person who got it positive may not even have the thing. So then what? Everybody who knows that person and everybody who knows those that know that person all have to quarantine, and then there's like 100 people under quarantine because of a false positive. They need to test that test and see if it's even accurate. But they don't. The only people who tested it were the people in Tanzania who found out that the papaya and the goat test positive. So there's a good sign. In Australian shops and supermarkets, you're not required to wear a mask. Most Australians aren't wearing masks. Well, that would be nice. San Diego, you have to wear one if you're going into stores. But like I said, it's almost always the store that's enforcing it, because the rule is you should wear it if you can't maintain 6 foot distance. So if you go into the store like a half hour before closing at the grocery store, there's not many people in there. You could totally maintain 6 foot distance, but then the store is requiring you. So I got a couple masks so I could get in the store, but they are charging a 5% C tax in Canada. I just today saw something about a C tax on a receipt, and I didn't have time to really look at it because it was like an hour ago. I mean, is that even legal? Canada has like jumped the shark worse than a lot of places. I don't, they banned a whole bunch of guns. It's like they're just going overboard over there. I love Canadians, but right now the Canadian government is shocking me with their takeover. I just I don't know. I guess I just thought better of the Canadian government than what I'm seeing. Yeah, I've known quite a number of Canadians, and I've gotten along great with all of them. But I'm, I don't know. Are people in Canada going along with all this, or are they pissed? I'm kind of curious. We have a limit on many things in the stores here. Is that Canada? What are we talking about, Leia? Um, Milk, toilet paper, cleaning products, etc. Locally, the toilet paper and the paper towels, especially the toilet paper, have not become reliable in the stores yet at all. In fact, the last couple times there weren't any there. But milk and some cleaning products are back, just not ones that contain alcohol. Like you could get Lysol now, but you're not going to get alcohol. Alcohol is basically getting slurped all up by them trying to make ridiculous amounts of hand sanitizer, and there's just not enough companies that make alcohol, and plus you've got to ferment it and like that. So it might be a while before alcohol shows up again. Did the government say if you wear a mask you won't catch it? No. Did they say stay 6 foot apart, you won't catch it? No. Yeah, that I know, but the government did say that you will get a giant, massive fine if you break any of these recommendations. So, um, yeah, they don't guarantee anything, but I don't know. It's just the whole thing is so weird. And then you've got that HR Bill 6666, and you've got the patent 060606, and then you've got that quantum dots tattoo that uses luciferase as the marker in the tattoo. I mean, a lot of it is just it's unreal. It's just like a weird, bad sci-fi, campy B movie with a stupid plot. No meat anywhere. Seriously? Where are you at now, you guys? Because we still have beef, but California does produce its own beef. Pork's a little low, but there's just not like every cut. And I haven't seen bacon in a while, but there's meat. Another thing it comes to mind, Chinese ghost cities. Why did they not just move the people and kids into them? Yeah, I wondered a lot about that when that was on TV the last year or two, where it's like China built all these cities and then nobody lives in them. And I guess they thought, I don't know. I mean, after one or two of those, wouldn't you stop building them? Yeah, the stories are weird. This whole timeline is weird. So anyway, what do we have limits on? We have limits on toilet paper and paper towels. I believe that is it. There's just no hand sanitizer, so there's no limits on it because you don't see it. I've been using Everclear 190 for alcohol. Yeah, I actually bought a 5 gallon of it and made up a bunch of hand sanitizer, but I don't really, that was like in the beginning when I didn't realize that it was so exaggerated. But I just, I can sell it or hand it out or whatever. It wasn't that expensive when you buy it by the 5 gallon. So, I'm a business person, so I always want to buy everything by the wholesale. All right, so looks like it's been kind of a quiet week for the sea. Basically, same baloney, different day. But there have been a lot of fairly interesting Mandelas. Chinese ghost cities are in preparation for the coming pole shift. Yeah, that's just one of about 15 fear porns going on right now. I'm just not really that worried about that stuff anymore. I've said before, I'm like almost 50 now, and I've seen so many fear porns like this. You know, acid rain and ozone layer, and the Arctic melt was going to flood 200 feet of coastline, and the killer bees, and there's peak oil. There's been stuff coming for like every year for years that was surely going to kill us all, and it never does. So now with the pole shifts and the magnetic pulse from the sun, then we've got, I don't know, there's just a whole bunch of new stuff. So I'm not I'm not going to worry about it. Run out of hamburger here and paper towels. That sucks. Because I really like eating beef, so ran out of hamburger and paper towel. We were out of some stuff for a while. I don't know if have you been out for months? Because what happened in San Diego was at the beginning of the lockdown, there was a big rush, and we were out of stuff for like a couple weeks, some things. Hamburger and pasta. You kind of tell what people's favorite comfort foods are because pasta and hamburger were out. Toilet paper, milk, but it was only the non-fat and the low-fat milk that was out. There was still whole fat milk. What else did we run out of? Canned food was getting low, but they were able to keep up with that one. I mean, you might not get the exact one you wanted. Like, I think SpaghettiOs ran out. Kraft macaroni and cheese ran out for a while. But after a few weeks, they were back. So, everything is backwards. People starting to get to me. Yeah. McDonald's is still shut, but they opened the donut shop. You have to admit, that's funny. Scotland is funny. No McDonald's, but yes on donuts. Gotta get your priorities straight around here. I mean, what are the police going to fuel themselves with if the donut shops aren't open? Do we? I see all the food places have been open, but only for takeout for us. So, I guess you could, I don't know, I guess you could get donuts to go. I love the taste of donuts, but my stomach doesn't, like, my body doesn't like them, so I haven't eaten them in a really long time. Dark Wolf's Den's in the house. Welcome, welcome. So how long have you been out of all that stuff? We're still out of toilet paper shows up and then it's gone. So, like, every third time there might be, and then they let you have a few rolls. Some meat ramen in most stores. So there's still food. Buy a lot of Kleenex. It works. Yeah, I heard it clogs the sewer system pretty bad, though. Dunkin' Donuts has been open the whole time. The decisions, I'm laughing at some of the, like, I just saw a little thing that said that the hiking trails were closed to bicycles in some place, but they were still letting people walk on the trails. What difference does it make? The COVID likes people on bicycles. It's just weird. You'd think the bicycle people would get farther away and not bunch up, and you can't really bicycle side to side as easy as you can walk side to side. It should be safer. So who came up with that rule? What logic were they using to decide these things? Just had a parcel guy at the door. I wonder how many dishonest people are going to say they didn't get it. He just leaves it at the door, goes away, no signing. That no signing thing is almost standard in the United States. When he delivers it, the delivery man has a scanner and he scans it as delivered, and that's pretty much considered gospel. Even though once in a while they'll deliver it to the guy next door or something or screw up, but generally speaking, if it's marked as delivered, then it's your problem now. The isolation has changed me back to a yogurt making, bread baking, jam cooking person. If I did all that, I would probably gain like 20 pounds. All that sugar just makes me gain weight really fast. JW's in, Bit of Venom's in. There's no logic in measures and what is open. Yeah, I know. There's no logic. A lot of them just like, I don't get it. I heard somebody locally that has a thrift store. They're just pushing all their stuff outside because nobody's allowed to go in, but they're allowed curbside pickup. So they just take all their stuff from the store and they've got racks and they put wheels on them and they just shove it all out and everybody shops there, and then they can buy it. It's like, is that any better than just going in? assuming that virus is a real threat, it would be just like that much better. It's just like, I don't get it. I mean, some countries have just left most things open and just canceled big events, and they've been fine. That's what we should have done. Okay, so now that I'm done making fun of the sea and venting, so this one is only slightly sea related. Somebody mentioned this one on Retcon, and then I wasn't going to talk about it, so I didn't write down their name, so I apologize. But then I saw this joke, and so the main Emmy part is, do you guys remember like there being a pandemic during Woodstock, and there's Woodstock being dangerous because of this pandemic? So apparently the Hong Kong virus H3N2, which killed over 1 million people worldwide and 100,000 Americans. 100,000 Americans, that's like a bad flu season will kill 250,000 Americans. So, I mean, it's still kind of like a flu. But instead of shutting down everything and ruining people's lives, they held Woodstock. So I don't know. Has anybody ever heard of Woodstock happening during a pandemic? Because that's an Emmy for me. I've never heard of that. Now, I've said before that I've never, it was a couple years ago that I saw all these pictures of rain during Woodstock. There was no rain during my Woodstock. Okay, so we're getting into the weird Mandelas. There's a lot of biological things. This one surprised me. I just found it earlier today. Surprise, fossils in a flash. So now they're saying stuff can fossilize within hours. So if like a fish could die and then in hours they could become a fossil, which sounds totally ridiculous. So they're saying that this could happen if calcium phosphate is used and is the mineral that mineralizes the fossil. And normally it's calcium carbonate. So they go, oh, well, if there's a lot of calcium phosphate, they can apparently, supposedly now become a fossil in like hours. So, yeah, okay, whatever. I don't know. So they're saying now that I've kind of covered this before, because first it was like, oh, there was a dinosaur bone and it was a really big bone and it actually broke open and they found a tiny little bit of fresh flesh in there after a gajillion million years. There's flesh on there. So, and then you're starting to see all these fossils that have like fossilized organs and everything. It's not just the bones anymore. So now they're saying, oh, well, they can fossilize in hours, and you can even see the cell structure on some of these fish. So it's just funny. So this whole article actually was quite the collection of Mandelas, because somebody in my rock club mentioned this fossils in a flash thing. So I went to this article. So supposedly they've known that fossils could become flash fossilized since 1992. So it's not that recent of discovery. It's almost it's like 18 years. I don't think so. Okay, so then they go on further down in here, calling it. So now they're also saying that bacteria can do something similar. They said the bacteria can go in there and then they eat the flesh material, but then they leave like a wall of bacteria in place of where the flesh was, so that they basically like replicate what was there before, but now all made out of bacteria instead of what like so say a shrimp's tissues is eaten by bacteria, and then the bacteria bodies take the place of the flesh of the shrimp, and then you have this like bacteria in the shape of a shrimp. So that was really weird. We usually think of decay as erasing an animal's body from its existence. Here the bacteria did start to eat away at a dead carcass, but they also helped to preserve the shrimp's tissues, sometimes within hours or days. Okay, so actually this one right here, there's multiple things going on. They're also going to say in here that other bacteria altered the fluid environment to make it more conducive to apatite crystal formation for this flash fossilization. Okay, so that was that bacteria yammer up there. Okay, so now we're talking about the bacteria that takes the place of the of the tissues. Okay, let me find where that. An embryo replaced with glued together bacteria is tough. It is essentially like turning it into plastic. When we keep them at room temperature up to 2 years in the lab, nothing bad happens to them. Okay, so this is the bacteria that took the place of the flesh. So there was, let's see. So they're talking about this fossil, this bacterialization. I don't know what to even have a word for it. I'm sure they're going to have to come up with a word. Bacterial fossilization. I don't know. They don't even. So they're saying the embryo still looked like an embryo, and yet there's no embryo material left. It's gone. In its place, they saw thousands of rod-shaped bacteria stuck together. Each bacterium was far tinier than the embryo, like a brick compared to a house. The microbes had completely eaten up the embryo, but as they grew and multiplied, they built a structure that perfectly matched the shape of the cells that they had eaten. The bacteria had glued themselves together by oozing out a starchy material called polysaccharide. An embryo replaced with the glued together bacteria is tough. It's like turning into plastic. Why would the bacteria do that? Why would they make a glued together brick carcass replacement of the original tissues? It's just weird. Oh, okay, now they've got apatite crystals mixed in with the bacteria too. Uh, I, I don't know. It's just whack. It's all whack. Um, so then, if that's not weird enough, if that's not strange enough, then they go on to say that they did research on like the rot, like how fast different creatures rot, like fish and birds and mammals and stuff. And so normally you always would assume that like the bones would be the last one, but they're like, oh no, the bones are earlier to go and the cartilage goes right away. And what's left, the last thing to rot, now they're saying it's like the nerve cords and stuff. So, um, so all the stuff you thought would rot first rots last, and all the stuff you thought would rot last rots first. And this is used for as an excuse for why they misinterpreted fossils all these years, because now they're saying that, well, it's probably a situation where all of the bones and cartilage had rotted away and left only nerve endings and nerve cords and stuff. So we never realized that these fossils had like bones and stuff because those all rotted first and only the soft tissues fossilized. It's all so ridiculous. I hope it can you follow any of this baloney, because this is just one article, okay? It just gets weirder. Electron microscopes are maximum shadiness. Everything is maximum shadiness in the current reality. I read somewhere the reason for the 2008 crash was the pandemic from before that. Really? Oh, I'm going to laugh if that becomes true. The pandemic I never even knew about. Uh, I'm going to laugh so hard if that becomes true. I feel like the 2008 financial crisis was a dry run. Hmm. I'm not really seeing it yet, but they're still referring to the pandemic as different than the 2008 one. All right, I'm gonna click on this one. This one's the only one that's mentioning them in the same breath. I don't think I'd be shocked if suddenly they said that the pandemic caused the 2008 one. Not at this point. Not after all this other baloney. Yeah, the 2008, whatever, what was that pandemic that was supposed to happen around there? And it was supposed to have started in my hometown, coming over from Mexico, and I never heard a thing about it. And they closed a bunch of schools, and somehow I never even knew. Yeah, they're not really giving anything on it. Boiling frogs. That's kind of a good name, isn't it? You know, that's a big Mandela, right? The boiling frog thing is not valid in this timeline. Frogs are smarter than people in this timeline. Last I checked, if you try to boil a frog, they'll just jump out of the water before they boil. I know that was true in the old reality, but it's not true in this reality. Humans, on the other hand, I am not sure if we're that smart. I don't even bother reading about new inventions and stuff anymore. Yeah, these are old though. They're old new inventions. Like 20 years ago they knew this stuff. I mean, when was these rot experiments done? I don't think I have a date for these rot experiments. Oh, wait. 2013 they published their findings, so pre 2013. Yeah, I could say that I missed this, but I've been following this stuff pretty hard, and that was around the time when I first heard maybe the very first snippet about there being tissue in a fossil, like the first time I've even heard of that, and it was just a little tiny bit in the middle of a really large bone, and even then it sounded weird. Okay, there's that one. Flash fossils. Okay, this is another weird one. Okay. Shari, you'll probably know some of these because they were on. There's a lot of these were on Retconned. So this one is on Retcon from user will work for answers is the person's username that they go by. The way this one is worded is strange because you've probably heard of convergent evolution. That's the concept where even though stuff is like maybe plants or animals aren't directly related, they develop kind of similar traits like porcupines in America are not supposedly very closely related to porcupines in Africa. They just supposedly independently develop spines on their backs. And indeed, the spines are different on the African ones in quite a number of ways than the American ones. So they would call that convergent evolution. But the way this sounds like it would also be convergent evolution, except for one of the species is already dead. But the way they're wording it makes it sound different. And I would probably write this off as clickbait if it wasn't that there were so many weird MEs anymore. So an extinct bird just evolved itself back into existence. It was declared using sea levels. However, the flightless brown bird has recently been spotted, leaving scientists scratching their head as to how and why the species has come back to life. So it makes it sound like this new one is identical looking to the old one and showed up again. So normally when you have convergent evolution, they don't look, like identical to each other. They'll just have similar traits. Like you can still tell the different porcupine species apart. So they're making it sound like it's the exact same bird again. But if it's been extinct that long, how do they know what the old bird looks like? I don't know, but it just the way they're writing this out, that means big fat spider. Ew. It wasn't one of the daddy long legs ones either. I don't know if it was the poisonous ones or not. Yeah. Okay, sorry. That wasn't how I planned to have spiders on the show today. Okay, so where was I? I'm like looking, and out of the corner of my eye I see All right, so where was I? Okay, that means that while a bird's ancestors might have disappeared, that DNA still remains, and provided the environment is right, there's nothing to stop those ancient genes from replicating in modern times. So that whole sentence is weird. It makes it sound like the DNA is hiding there and then it just springs back out again or something. So identical species can indeed produce multiple slightly evolved offshoots throughout the course of their species history. So they used to make it sound like the Darwin's theory, it was just random mutations that just one of them happened to be successful. But now they're making it sound like the same species just kind of punts out the same subspecies or the same related species over and over again. It doesn't, the way they're saying it doesn't make it sound random. It makes it sound like the DNA is hiding in there. And like I said, in another timeline, I would have probably just said this is a badly written article, but not anymore. I think this is trying to plant an idea in there, a different way of thinking about DNA. Don't get your hopes up that this means dinosaurs and woolly mammoths will be popping up next. The scientific phenomena only occurs within species that are nearly identical to their ancestors. But we're seeing like elephants and stuff that are getting fuzzy with the longer tusks. So I don't think that, I think that we will see more of this kind of thing. While iterative evolution has previously occurred in species such as turtles, it has never been seen in the realm of birds. We know of no other example in the rails or of birds in general. In the rails, what are the rails? So iterative, what is that word they just used? Iterative evolution. I'm just going to do a quick Google on that and see what comes up. Iterative evolution. Because I've never heard that term before. The repeated evolution of a specific trait or body plan from the same ancestral lineage at different points in time. Okay. That's okay. So the difference between convergent evolution is they're totally different species traits, but now they're saying like this one species keeps punking off the same subspecies at different times. I mean, why would they punk off the same subspecies style? Why wouldn't they do some other one or one of hundreds and hundreds of other options? So yeah, interesting concepts. We are done. Okay, so that was will work for answers, and this one is also will work for answers. We've covered this before, but I think there's another color now. And that's like the different colors of blood. I think we were either missing blue or green last time. So now, used to be red, blood was red. There was a spiel like that you had to have hemoglobin. I thought it was pretty narrow-minded when I was a kid to assume that they always assume that life couldn't function without hemoglobin. Like the idea was there was no other molecules that were going to be able to do the job. But in this timeline, there's tons of other things. So all the different colors of blood. Red, of course, is what we have. due to iron. So beetles, sea squirts, and sea cucumbers have yellow blood because they have a high concentration of vanabin in their blood, which contains the chemical vanadium, which turns yellow when oxygenated. So this is another interesting thing about this particular storyline is we have this idea of blood turning a different color when oxygenated. Now, a lot of us remember that they said that the human blood was red in the arteries and then blue in the veins due to lack of oxygen. But when you cut yourself, the oxygen would immediately touch it and turn it red again. That's why even though you could see your blue veins, but when you cut yourself, you didn't see blue blood because the oxygen would immediately change the color. So there were skeptics acting like that was the dumbest thing they'd ever heard in their life and we're a bunch of morons. But yet now we have the same concept here with all these other kinds of blood, just not our blood. Now, my old timeline didn't have all these other kinds of blood. So I don't know if the Emmy is trying to say, like, oh, you just got confused with beetles. Instead of human vein blood, it was beetles that you were thinking of. So the story now is that when this chemical, when this blood gets, like, if you squish a beetle and oxygen gets on the blood, then the blood will turn yellow when it's oxygenated. Vanabin does not aid in the transport of oxygen through the body. Its purpose is still a mystery. Woo. I don't know how you have red hemoglobin and then somehow this vanabin could take over that. Since when does yellow block the red color? Unless they have some other vehicle for the oxygen. Let's see. What carries oxygen in beetles? Get the spelling of the new WWII beetles instead of the BA beetles. In insects, the tracheal tubes primarily deliver oxygen directly into the tissues. Oxygen travels to insect tissues through tiny openings in the blood called spiracles and then through tiny blind-ended air-filled tubes called tracheae. Okay. Oxygen transport systems were long thought unnecessary in insects, but ancestral and functional hemocyanin has been found in the hemolymph. Hemocyanin. It is composed of fluid plasma in which hemolymph cells. I got a cut on my elbow when I scraped my elbow and it just itched and then I was afraid it was the spider. Oh my God, all spider creepy. Okay. No arthropods, blah, blah. Functional hemocyanin has been found in the hemolymph. Insect blood generally does not carry hemoglobin, although hemoglobin may be present in the tracheal system instead and play some role in respiration. All right, so hemocyanin are proteins that transport oxygen. These metalloproteins contain two copper atoms that reversibly bind a single oxygen molecule. I wonder what color it is then. Copper molecule sounds like it'll be green again. All right, so they don't have hemoglobin. Almost nothing uses hemoglobin in this timeline. In my old timeline, it was blood, it was hemoglobin. That was it. It was a super boring timeline. All right, so it's colorless until the oxygen hits it, and then it's blue. Okay. Anyway, back to the colors. So, yellow for beetles, sea squirts, and sea cucumbers. Marine worms, segmented worms, and leeches have green blood. Ew, creepy. Spiders, crustaceans, octopuses, and squids, and some mollusks have blue blood because of copper in their blood proteins. That might have been that hemocyanin I was just talking about. Normally the blood is colors, but when the copper is oxygenated, it turns blue. Okay, so again, everything and its uncle gets a color change when their blood is oxygenated, except for humans. And it used to be humans were the only ones that had that. brachiopods, I'm not saying that word, peanut worms, and some other types of marine worms have purple blood. When oxygenated, hemorrhinin turns a violet pink color. Pink purple blood. What is this creature here even? I don't even know. What is that supposed to be? So only humans now don't color change with the oxygenation. We're the exceptions to the rule, and we used to be the rule. Miss Imaginary has to go. I may have imagined you the whole time, though. Arnie slept a little quarantine. Oh, you guys aren't speaking English. That might be part of the problem. I'm like, I don't get it. Earthworms have red blood, or they used to bleed red, and when I used them for bait. Yeah, actually, I did use them for bait when I was a kid, and it was red. So anyway, those were from We'll Work for Answers. Brought that one up. There used to be red blood based on iron and green based on copper. No copper for me. I come from a long ways away. Again, I call baloney. Purple blood work. I follow different YouTubers that are not connected in any way lately are saying the same thing about what's going on. Oh, about the sea and all the... there was a lawsuit. One of the news I didn't really cover about the sea was a lawsuit showed up in the last couple days that was supposedly about the vaccine companies lost a lawsuit, and the lawsuit was about that the vaccines companies are supposed to give these regular updates on safety testing of vaccines. And so a Freedom of Information Act was performed to see the outcomes of these safety tests. And the aforementioned safety test info was not coughed up. And so a lawsuit to demand the information was performed. And it turns out that none of these safety checks were ever done or filed ever in like 30 years of vaccines since they were supposed to do it. And the other thing that came out was that basically there's been no safety testing or checking for like 30 years. So interesting though, because several channels that I'm on are people who follow this stuff, and they were flabbergasted that this happened. Now, some of them are reporting it was in 2020, and it's kind of a weird chain of events, because somebody basically said that it happened in 2020, but if you follow the link back, this lawsuit actually happened in 2018, or at least that's the official, but you have to do a little hunting to figure that out. So this guy was, like a couple guys were flabbergasted that they didn't know about this because they follow all the vaccine law and research and lawsuits, and they never heard of it. So I'm wondering if this is basically another retrocausality addition to our timeline, that they say it happened in 2018 officially, but somebody just happened to post it as if it just happened. But it would be just too weird if there was a giant lawsuit that the vaccine companies just lost like right now. I mean, there's so many weird things already happening like right now that I think the timeline tried to like basically say, oh, it was 2018, but yet then it makes people all freak out because they think it happened right now. So what does that lawsuit, what's the story that lawsuit is telling is basically going to inform a lot of people that apparently in current timeline, there's no safety testing for vaccines. I don't think it was that bad in my old timeline a long time ago, but apparently in this timeline, there is none. And we have seen in the last 6 months that a whole bunch of weird, bad news and bad evidence for vaccines have suddenly shown up. So vaccines really suck in this timeline, from what I can tell. There's a lot of evidence against them in this timeline that just showed up, and now we find out that they've no safety testing's been done. And then you add on their complete lack of liability. They have total liability protection. And now with the new one, these new vaccines are they're no animal testing, and they are exempt from all safety testing, but they never did any safety testing anyway. It's just stacking up as to be like, it's just a ridiculous story. I mean, anybody who would not question this is just shocking to me. Frankly, there's so much data that like again, it's like a bad B movie. I mean, you watch these movies and you're like, like a horror movie, don't let that guy go out himself to check the perimeter. He's gonna die. Like everybody watching the show knows that's dumb. And yet this stuff here is like 3 times dumber than a bad B movie, and yet people are accepting it. I don't know. I saw an article by NASA. They said they found evidence of a parallel universe to ours that works in reverse. Yeah, I read that article, and so there was a particle. I think it was neutrinos. And they're saying that I'm pretty sure that was neutrinos. They were saying this particle should not be able to get through like the density of the Earth and come out the other side. They can hit the Earth, but they won't get through. Okay, so what they saw was particles coming out the other side of the Earth. So they're saying that, well, those particles can't do that. Therefore, they must be like going reverse. That must be like they must be going backwards through time, like the reverse of hitting the Earth. They were like reversing out of the Earth, and so it was evidence of a parallel universe. It could be just evidence of a neutrino that you didn't understand that can go through the Earth. I don't know if you remember, like about 6 months to a year ago, they were saying that weird particles were coming out of Antarctica that they didn't understand. So I think this might be related to that. But I do think that their evidence of a parallel universe in this case is kind of questionable. So that's one of the reasons I didn't really cover that story, because the interpretation is open to a lot of questions. Slightly similar about the Saharan cheetah reappearing in Algeria after disappearing. Issues that I never heard even about the Algeria having such felines. Yes, there's a lot of animals lately that are like, oh, we thought these were extinct, but then they showed up. I'm like, I never heard of them being extinct or other. So, again, suspicious. I was listening to one of Dolores Cannon's talks, and she was describing everything that we were experiencing. She named it New Earth, and signs of New Earth is new animals and extinct ones coming back. Yeah, and if you ever read the what is it? Those out of body travel ones like Voyages, Beyond Something. What was that guy? Robert Monroe wrote those. He also describes at one point visiting the future and seeing any animal that ever existed now was alive again on Earth. That's how he described it. But I mean, if they're just kind of, I mean, I don't know. It's like backwards time. It's like they're coming into our timeline from now, and then they always existed. So it's kind of confusing to me. When I read the Robert Monroe stuff, I'm like, well, that sounds highly unlikely unless somehow they got the DNA of those animals and like cloned them. So I was thinking, well, that I could see. Maybe our tech gets so good, our skills get so good that we can clone any animal that ever existed and have them back on the Earth. But now, I mean, reality is actually way weirder than that book or even my imagination, because they're just showing up. So Dolores Cannon also talks about the splitting of the Earth with the good people going one way and the bad people going another way. And that also does sound a lot like the biblical wheat from the chaff and the end times, and then the splitting of the bad from the good. So there's also like a Hopi tradition that describes something similar, that To me, it's an ME because I'd never heard of that Hopi one before. But, so yeah, I do think that's pretty much what we're going through right now. So, Shari, when you say the YouTubers are all saying the same thing about what's going on, like that the sea has got a bunch of fishy business going on, is that what you mean? Or just like there's a bunch of weird animals and stuff showing up? I feel like we shifted somewhere that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I think, we've all grown up with these certain paradigms, and all of those are just being flipped on their ear. So, fossils now can fossilize in 3 hours. Mercury is so hot that it grows more ice. The sun makes water. Everything sounds whackdoodle. So, and I think I've covered this before, but if you look at a lot of the stories that come out in the media now, just like for instance, some dude gets shot, and then at first it's like, oh, the police are horrible, they just shot this innocent guy, and then everybody's all bagging on the police for a week, and then a week later new evidence suggests the guy was maybe trying to rob a store, and then all of a sudden the other side's, haha, that guy was actually the criminal, he wasn't innocent. And then another piece of evidence comes out. Wait a minute. It turns out he wasn't trying to rob the store. Ha ha. And so, like, every story is like that. It's like whiplash. Your your brain, I don't know if it's trying to train people to, like, look, don't make assumptions. Maybe you're wrong. Maybe you don't know the whole story. Maybe you should just wait and see before you pass judgment in 5 seconds on other people. Or is that what some people are being taught? You start to be like, wait a minute, I'm going to withhold judgment until at least I have a little more information. I mean, hopefully some people are learning that. But there just seems to be so much about it. And the sea is a classic example. First they say that if you smoke a lot, your lungs are weak and you might get it. And then a study comes out, oh, wait, it looks like people who smoke nicotine are protected, which makes no sense. But somehow, wear a mask, don't wear a mask. If you stay home, that's the safest place. Oh, no, wait, if you stay home, most people who got the C lately were people who stayed home because you're concentrating the virus. And it's like, everything is just like, yes, it was man-made virus. No, it wasn't a man-made virus. Yes, it escaped from Wuhan lab. No, it escaped from some other lab. No, wait, maybe it escaped from a French lab. No, wait, maybe it escaped from an American lab. The Chinese lied, the Chinese didn't lie, the Americans lied, the Americans... It's like every 5 minutes there's a new whiplash to the story. So, yeah, it's just like you just got to sit back and watch the plot unravel. Another shocking thing in this timeline is that news are now seen as entertainment and can lie. Yeah, and I guess there's now this rule that the CIA is allowed to lie to the American people for the last couple of years if it's in the interest of the safety of the United States, is apparently the excuse. So, like, that, easily could be abused. So a lot of laws that used to protect us are, like, gone. Like, we used to have, the Constitution used to ban debtors' prisons, but now it doesn't, so that's gone. Any laws that were in the way of the end times, I guess, got snuffed out, at least for now. And you talk of moon glass. I'm not familiar with it. What are the penis worms? I guess I could already say it because I've already decided not to even try to monetize anymore. Penis worms. Yeah, those have been on. They're so gross. They're an older ME, but they just keep getting creepier and ickier. Penis worms. So there's these giant worms, and they just basically... I can't believe you haven't seen those yet. Those are like the one of the favorite MEs. Like you would not notice these things. I mean, if these were in your reality before, you would have remembered it. So there they are. So this is a giant. I think they're fish now or something. Penis fish. I don't know, but they're worms or I don't know. I mean, there's no way you wouldn't know what that is. Oh, look, there's a new species. Does that even look real? Oh my gosh. It looks like some kind of toy. I don't know, want to say what. Um, Identify new species of penis worm. The penis worms are a group of marine invertebrates named for their penis-like shape. All species of the tubular animals, which can reach lengths of 39 centimeters, which is pretty big, have an extendable mouth called a proboscis that is lined with sharp hooks, teeth, and spines. Oh, yay! Some species still exist to date. Okay, so maybe that was a new one found in ancient times because that doesn't look like a real guy. It looks like it looks like is that a real one now? I'm gonna have to go back and look at the latest species of these things. So yeah, this must be like a reproduction of a supposedly extinct one. So there you go. Woohoo. It looks like we're in for some more species of these things. This timeline does like it's sex-related jokes, definitely. The blue bloods. You're talking about that the milking of the blood removal of the horseshoe crabs. That one's been around for like 3-4 years for me. The horseshoe crab milking and their blue blood. Don't investigate strange sounds and scary places on your own. Not if you're in a horror movie. I actually do that myself. I'm still alive, but you know what? We're not in a horror movie. We're in like a, what are we in, a bad B-rated Twilight Zone movie? And most people in the Twilight Zone movies do survive. I also thought Jane Goodall was dead again, but she was alive talking about viruses. She just died that one time in the 90s for me. We have not only blue pigeon, but Victoria crowned pigeon. I think I've seen that one. Pigeon. So that D is no longer in pigeon. For a short while, pigeon was Pidgeon. Ooh, look at those, are pretty. I have not seen those. I take it back. I was thinking it was like those ice cream colored ones. Oh, those are neat. Well, those are nice. People wouldn't call them little sky rodents if they were that cute. Neat. Look at those eyes. Woof. Sunbathing. They like sunbathing, huh? Sunbathing. Look at that. There are some neat looking animals in this timeline, have to admit. Corona, crown. Yeah, we've talked about that some. So, I mean, that could mean a lot of things because corona could be a good thing or a bad thing. And I think it might depend on which timeline you go to. It wasn't called like the Black Death virus or anything. Corona, that it could mean so many things. Crab milking. Well, basically, it's not really milking, but they call it milking. But So in this timeline, the horseshoe crab has this blue blood that is highly sensitive to contaminants, and so they collect a bunch of these crabs and they take out each of them. They remove some blood and then they re-release it, and then they use this blood in the pharmaceutical industry, supposedly, anyways. So then there's this big old stink, like, oh, that's mean to the crabs and all that. I don't even know. The stuff on the TV. I mean, is it even real? I don't even know. But it's hard for me to get all upset about something that just showed up. $10. Woohoo! Who gave it to me? Oh, where'd it go? There, Leah. Thank you so much for saying the P word. Well, you know why I didn't want to say it was because I was in the habit of trying to be like PG-13 so that I wouldn't lose my search engine ranking. But I gave up on that. I'm like, wait a minute. If I'm not even going to try to be in the ranks, I might as well just go ahead and say it. I mean, that's the name of it that this timeline gave it. I didn't come up with that word. I smoke a lot of drugs and I have asthma. No tobacco, sometimes cloves. Cloves are the best smelling thing ever invented, ever, in my opinion. I just love that smell. I haven't smoked them. I got when I was a kid, I smelled it for the first time and it was like nirvana. So now I have like clove cologne and stuff. I don't want to, I just once in a while, because I'll get habituated to a smell really fast and I won't be able to smell it. So I can't overdo it on those. A lot of what's been going on for years seems to be an initiation ritual. Now, I have heard that, with the masks and there's different ways to look at it. When they're trying to change a person, they will do certain things like isolate them away from their normal routines and kind of do like sensory deprivation and just kind of mix up their way of thinking. So that can be used for good or it could be used for ill. If they have bad habits, maybe they're hanging out with gangs or whatever, you can use that to help them break out of that. But you could also use that to brainwash them into a new thing that you want them to do. So again, it's something that you could look at either way. So it could be that it just depends on what timeline. I think a lot of people are learning stuff and being exposed to experiences that they don't normally have, and so it is educational. On the flip side, some people are getting really brainwashed by all this. All the cool people smoke cloves. Yeah, well, my lungs don't really like flaming hot smoke in them, so I just sniff them. My dad's whole side died of let's see, three brothers. My dad and his two brothers died of lung cancer from smoking, and then their sister died of they died of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease mixed with heart problems from smoking, and then the sister died from cancer from smoking. So it's just not a good idea for my family to be smoking. Plus, there's asthma in the family. The lungs are our weak spot. So, like even years back with the ice bucket challenge. Oh yeah, those weird challenges. The cinnamon challenge. Some of them are really stupid. I just don't know why people think it would be fun to do that stuff, but I don't know. I kind of wonder, is that reality trolling you? Let's see how many idiots we could get to dump buckets of ice water on their head. Let's see how many idiots we can get to suck down a bunch of cinnamon and have it snort out their nose. Okay, so I still got a lot more. Those were just the sheets from today that I hadn't written down on the main sheet. What's the capital of South Africa? Shari, no cheating because you probably read this one on Redcon. South African capital. Dum dum dum. This one is from user Sid Barre or Sid Barrett. Cidbarret from Retcon. First time hearing about smoking cloves. I had friends that smoked, and they did smoke cloves, and I guess you got like a little bit of a high from it. I mean, I never tried it, but just kind of like a mild buzz, not really, you know. I mean, I don't know if it'd be any worse than actual cigarettes with that nicotine, because I did try. Now that they came out with the vape, I tried nicotine once just to see how it was, because I knew that I didn't have to suck flaming hot smoke into my lungs, and that nicotine really does pack a wallop. You know, if you're not already addicted, it's like, your brain does weird things. So this is a trick question, but the capital is South Africa. I've never heard of this before. Some people have heard of some of this, but now I think I heard one country had this a few months ago, but it was just two capitals. So apparently now we're up to three capitals for South Africa. Um, so they have one capital for the executive branch, one capital for the judicial branch, and one capital for the legislative branch. South Africa has three cities that serve as capitals: Pretoria, Cape Town, and Bloemfontein. Now I remember Cape Town being the capital. That's what I had to memorize. It was Cape Town. Um, you almost wonder if there's like different timelines with different capitals, and this is the solution now, that all these timelines are coming together. We'll just have, like three different capitals. This timeline just seems like it solves problems that way. We'll just have 75 different versions of this. So yeah, no, I never, when I had to memorize all the capitals, there was never any problems with me having to memorize more than one capital per country. So yeah, now some countries have two or three capitals. It might be kind of convenient. You could kind of spread out all the, you wouldn't have to have so much high expensive housing for the different government branches. But why have one capital if you could have 10? Yes. See, now it was up to 2 ago. Now this one's up to 3. I wonder if what country has the most capitals. This timeline is so silly. You have to laugh. All right, the most well-known example of a country with 2 capitals is Bolivia. They have both La Paz and Sucre. Now, it was definitely La Paz was the capital for me. I've never heard of Sucre. Which country has the most capital cities? South Africa. Okay, South Africa is currently the winner. We'll see if any of them come up with any additionals. Is South Africa the only country with 3 capitals? All right, so only South Africa has 3 right now. Which country has no capital? The country of Nauru. What country is that? The Yarran district is just an area on the island's southern shore where most of its important buildings are located. Nauru. Sounds like something from some fantasy book. Nauru. So there's a country? What is the definition of a country anymore? Nauru. N-A-U. Nauru. Let's try the wiki. This thing's loading so slow. All right, so officially the Republic of Nauru, formerly known as Pleasant Island, is an island country in Micronesia. Yep. Oh, it was Australia's dumping ground. What did I just read? Australia's dumping ground for refugees. Its phosphate reserves once made a speck in the Pacific Ocean one of the richest countries on Earth. Today, Nauru is broke, barren, and beholden to blah, 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 blah. Um, that's got quite a little story and its own little old country with no capital. You know, I really feel sorry for kids like learning their countries and capitals because, I mean, what if a new one shows up before the test? What if a capital split? I mean, if you're Mandela affected, you gotta hope that like you studied like right the night before in case a new one shows. Oh my gosh. They changed the cloves back in 2008 or close to it. They are not near as good. Said it was to make them less addictive and attractive to the kids. Well, that's no fun. Cloves remind me of dentists, so not a big fan. Why? Did they do something with cloves in the dentists? I remember the smell was so good. I'm going to have to get some more from Etsy and see if they still smell. We were using them. I went camping and there was a art project and we were going to thread different things and make little bracelets and stuff. And cloves was one of the things. And I thought I had literally received the rapture when I smelled those cloves. I was like, what are these called? Oh my God, they're the best smell ever. Like 10 times better than any other smell I've ever smelled. That is the smell of cloves. I'm going to be mad if they don't still smell good. Because I'll tell you something, and I've had this since the 90s, so I'm pretty sure it's not C related, but my sense of taste has been real whack the last 4 or 5 days. And I've had episodes like this before. But my sense of smell is still good. Clove oil for toothaches. Oh, okay. Knock on wood, I've never actually had a toothache, so that's probably why I don't know that. I swear that Johannesburg was on the coast at the actual location of Knysna. What's Knysna? It's Knysna. 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 Never heard that word before. Knysna is a town. Okay. Oh, okay. So you're just talking about sliding towns. Seems like all the main cities have slid around on all the countries. So a lot of people say San Diego has slid south. I would agree with that. I do remember San Diego looking further north on the map when I first moved here. It used to have a little space between San Diego and the border. Now it's like squashed right onto it. It's weird. Pitty seems to have asthma. He's a dog, and is it contagious now? And from human to pet, he's having a hard time breathing. I'll tell you something. A friend of ours' cat late last year had a weird respiratory infection, and they had a hard time kicking it. And then, like a month later, our cat got a nasty respiratory infection, and he was wheezing and wheezing, and he'd never had anything like that. And so they gave him antibiotics, which did nothing. And then we gave him the cat version of prednisone, which I believe is called prednisolone. And that worked. His breathing cleared right up. And then we weaned him off the prednisolone, and he's been totally fine. So you might want to try some of that prednisolone and see. They're saying that some cats maybe can get the C. I don't even know. I mean, a lot of the symptoms for C are symptoms that we've been talking about for the last couple years for shift sickness. And one of them is weird erratic taste buds or loss of taste. That's been going on for years with the shift people. So yeah, I don't know what to say on this respiratory infection thing, but the cat got a respiratory infection, and then Dave, my friend, got one. He's the one who rents the other building. But I didn't get one. But I had one later last year. So actually, when was it? It was this year that the cat got the respiratory infection. Actually, yeah, I think it was before Christmas that the friend's cat got it, and then it was later that ours got it this year. So I don't know, but It's not like any of us immediately came down with a deadly disease or anything. And so Dave got a respiratory infection, but it was no way like super bad. He just was coughing some, and he was a little short of breath for a while, and then he was fine. So it wasn't a big deal. I don't know. I sometimes wonder if this whole thing isn't a big shift sickness, and one of the current symptoms just happens to be respiratory. Personally, I really have to wonder about that. If Earth is splitting to a new Earth, like all the Ascension people are thinking, we've got the crappy, silly Earth. Well, I think we still got a combination of the bad and the good Earth. They're still sitting on top of each other. They aren't split. So I'm looking at all this illogic, and I think it's fine if it's paired with more empathy and love and all that. Maybe that's the direction we have to go now. Maybe we went a little too far into the intellectual, emotionless zone. If people are more artistic and more right-brained, that may not be a bad thing. If it's not people, if people are balanced psychologically, if they reach that balance, then it wouldn't be a big problem. It's, when people like get angry and start yelling, and then their whole reason for it makes no sense, and like that, that's when you start to really get upset with the lack of logic. But if someone is kind and loving and maybe not very intellectual, you tend to be pretty forgiving of it, because there's this whole other beautiful side to it that you appreciate. So I think some timelines may split off that way. We'll see. I have to say also, though, in the last few years, I do feel like it is just harder to rally the intellectual mind. It's just kind of easy to space out and be more ADD. And I've had to fight that too. So maybe it's something we also just have to learn to work with it, where it's sort of like being intellectual while you're in a dream. If any of you ever lucid dream, you know how hard it is to kind of rally that part of your brain, because you're in this right brain environment and you're trying to use logic. And so maybe part of it is that people are thrown into this environment and they're not used to operating in it, and they've got to build up their skills. So that might also be part of it. But all the ME changes are inferior to the original, though. No logic. Sky lower, white sun. I don't necessarily think that those are inferior. Sky, the clouds lower, the white sun. Those are just different. I don't see anything innately inferior about those. All the pretty rainbows, all the pretty animals, I'd count those as an upgrade, personally. There's a lot of neat stuff in this timeline. There's also stuff I think is disgusting. So I call it a mixed bag, personally. Taste has been off for me the last few years. It comes and goes with me, but this last week has definitely been go, it would be the word, because although I had some coconut ice cream last week, and it was like nectar of the gods. And part of it might be because I haven't had any in months, but that was one thing that I suddenly could taste it times 3. But other things tasted, bad. Like things that usually taste good just didn't. They weren't hideous, but they were. I was just like, well, I got to eat this because otherwise I'll be hungry all day. But I didn't enjoy it. A lot of the foods I've been eating lately, they're generally considered. They're foods that I feel healthy on, but they don't taste good lately. True, like the rainbow mountains, trees, halos around the sun. Some things are pretty cool. Yeah, some things are cool. Some histories are better. What was that one that just changed? Oh, I was just looking into the history of the killer bees, because I'm always joking about that being a fear porn that didn't come to pass. So, originally in my old timeline, the killer bees were like this African species of bees that were being studied and got loose in South America from a lab, and they all escaped, and then they started breeding in like South America, and then they spread through Mexico, and then they came up through California and Texas and were invading the United States. Okay, so now the story is that they're actually a hybrid species that were specially bred to be extra aggressive by the lab, but they weren't. They're in their native lands are not even that aggressive, and that one aggressive species escaped in South America, and they never were really that mean though. So it seems like that the super aggressive beehives that killed, like just attacked and killed a whole bunch of people, are just not really a thing in this timeline, and instead we're getting these kind of aggressive bees. They're worse than normal bees, but they're not as bad as the bees of my old timeline. And interestingly, I've been griping about having an Africanized hive in the wall over here, and how we're trying to get rid of it. And my friend was saying just now that a beekeeper who has like 150 hives had like 50 of his hives suddenly become Africanized and aggressive. And they're noticing the same symptoms that I'm noticing, is these bees don't go to sleep at night like the old bees did. It used to be the sunset, it was like lights out. They'd all pack into their home and mine their own beeswax. But this species, or whatever they are, they're still out and guarding the hive and ready to sting your butt late at night. And so that's what they were seeing in his where he keeps his bees, is that people were trying. So they had to take out the queens of like a third of their hives and trade them out for new queens. And when you do that, the new queens don't have the Africanized blood, and then the new bees that are born are more friendly. But I think that's interesting. The other thing I noticed was that they're saying now that African bees will, and this isn't me because this was not in the old timeline, African bees, Africanized bees, will sometimes go and kill the queen of another hive and then take over that hive with their own queen. I'm not even sure how they would accomplish that, because why are they allowed to get into the queen of the other hive? They weren't clear on that. So that story is a little fuzzy. But there definitely has been a thing lately with a bunch of these Africanized little stinker bees. So we have whittled down our Africanized hive quite a bit, and we're thinking of pushing needles through the wall and poisoning them, because we got to get rid of them. They're attacking everybody. They're awful. I mean, I don't like to poison things, but we've all gotten attacked so many times by these bees. The cat got attacked. They're dangerous. And plus, I've got to do some yard work, and I can't do it because of those bees. So yeah, now we got the murder hornets, but supposedly they're not that aggressive. I am not worrying about those murder hornets, because after the whole killer bee thing was a dud, I'm like, okay, so now we got the bigger, new, improved killer bee 2.0 story. Oh, is Susan? Yeah, hey, what's up? You guys are keeping me awake. Well, it's my fault that you're awake. Are you sure it's not that loud cat of yours? I'm blaming hornets on you. Americanized would be total devastation. Okay, so let me see what's up. What are we up to now? So anyway, we got the 3 capitals. Okay, this one is a little bit creepy because of the way it's going. So the pineal gland. Now, we've already talked in the past about people thinking it's moved forward more. It used to be way back by the brainstem. Now it's moved up. So everybody refers to it like the third eye gland or something. Somehow that got started a while back. So now, apparently, the pineal gland has retinal tissue inside it, and it is attached to the visual cortex. So it's almost literally becoming the third eye now. And so they're saying that, in some animals it is light sensitive, but even the human pineal gland has retinal tissue in it. So some animals then have this pineal aperture that allows the light to get right into the pineal gland. And so they literally almost have like a third eye now, like some lizards and stuff have this thing. And so now the story is that somehow humans missed out on having the third eye, whereas these other animals got it. Um, so I don't know. I just, when I start reading this, I'm like, are we going to get like a third freaking eye? I mean, is it going to, so many of the other animals are getting this. Um, Pineal aperture, I believe it was called. Oh, it might have been apparatus. Pineal apparatus. Okay, pineal eye. Let's just go for that. Pineal eye. In some reptiles and lower vertebrates, an eye-like structure on the top of the head covered by almost transparent skin and derived from the link to the pineal. So I've talked about this light sensing parietal eye on so many animals now. So apparently now it's also somehow linked to like a pineal eye. I'll show you the, so I knew of it as called the parietal eye lately. Okay, so there it is on this guy. So that's basically his third eye, but I had not heard of it called the pineal eye. So now, like, it's like the pineal gland is moving up to where this parietal eye is on these animals, and in humans too, it's moving up to that location, and so it's being called like a pineal eye. So it's literally becoming like a third eye. Do humans have a pineal eye? Now, I looked to see if any humans had one, and the answer was no. Nearly all vertebrate species possess a pineal gland. It is linked to a light-sensing organ in some species of amphibians and reptiles, known as the parietal eye, which is also called the pineal eye or third eye. Okay, so basically this third eye thing is like coming to pass, kind of. I'm wondering if we'll get that eventually. Like, you look at the people from India and they put that spot there, and that's like where the pineal eye is. I mean, I don't know. It's getting weirder and weirder. Okay, so yes, the Titanic. Yes, that was what that was. The thumbnail. So there's a new weird story with the Titanic. Does that Titanic look like you remember the Titanic? What do you remember on the Titanic? Actually, when I saw that image, I'm like, I did not think that was the Titanic. But then it said it was, and I Googled it, and sure enough, it's the freaking Titanic. So a lot of the old photos are black and white, but that one's like a colorized version. And first of all, that looks way too modern for me. It doesn't look like the old school ship I remember. I don't remember this red stripe that they're depicting on it down here by the ocean. And I do not remember 4 of these tower thingy-madoogles. I remember 3 of the tower thingy-madoogles. And somebody else a while back was saying that they remembered them being red. So that was like an ME, that the towers were red. I do remember seeing them red. The red looks really familiar. I couldn't swear to that, but I can swear that last time I looked at the Titanic, I am pretty sure there were only 3 of these tower things. So in this timeline, this 4th one up here in the front is a fake one. The 4th smokestack is a fake because they wanted the ship to look bigger. See if I can find an article on. They wanted the ship to look bigger, was the story I read a couple days ago. The first three were open to allow exhaust smoke. I've heard rumors that the fourth smokestack was fake. Only the first three smokestacks were actually connected to furnaces that produce smoke. The fourth smokestack was, in a sense, a dummy stack. I believe that it wasn't entirely for show to give the ship pleasant lines. If I remember correctly, it contained air vents or something. So basically, when I read it, though, they were saying it was to make it look bigger. Don't forget the cemetery and the Cunard. Had 4 funnels. White Star wasn't. I don't know. Anyway, it's just weird. I don't remember. I've looked into the Titanic a number of times because the Mandelas just keep showing up. And I just remember there being 3 back here. That's the 4th one, looks weird. So in this timeline, there's 4, and this one is fake. The other story that keeps flip-flopping all over the place is whether or not they had enough lifeboats. So the story for eons was that they did not have enough lifeboats. And then for a while we were in the timeline, then they did have enough lifeboats, but people were bad at deploying them, and some panicky people deployed them before they were loaded, and like that. Okay, then now the new story is they did have enough lifeboats. That's baloney phony. That was the 3rd batch of timelines. So the very current batch of timelines that as of like 2 days ago was that they had the lawful required number of lifeboats was not enough lifeboats for everybody on the ship. So the new story is the law did not require you to have enough lifeboats for everybody on the ship. They only needed like 1,100 and something, and they had a little bit more than they were required by law. Why in the heck would you not require enough lifeboats for the whole ship? Makes no sense, but that's just typical timeline stuff. So now the story is they had the legally required number of lifeboats, which weren't enough, and everybody sucked at deploying them. And so those 2 are the story. And if you look, there's also a bunch of photos now of like right after people were rescued from the disaster and stuff that I don't remember seeing. But a lot of them are behind paywalls, so I didn't get at very many of them. But there's a lot of photos, let's just say, a lot that I don't remember any of. So that's the thumbnail. So how then did the fake stack smoke? It was connected to something. What? Somebody's saying it was the galley. Let me see if I can find a better article. Why did the Titanic? The reason they wanted the 4th smokestack is because the Cunard vessels by then had 4 funnels, and they believed if the Olympic-class vessels only had 3 funnels, the public would view them as being underpowered. The 4th tunnel was for ventilation only and was added for aesthetic reasons, to make the ship look more powerful and majestic. The height of the funnels extended above the deck, 81 feet. So yeah, I guess it didn't smoke then. I don't know. This timeline is, can you imagine? I really just don't think it's going to add that much to the ship. I don't know. This timeline is just stupid. Okay, so let's see what you guys are up to. I really can't talk to people about anything anymore. I have no idea if my info are legit. I know. Dave was saying something the other day, and I wanted to say that's bullpucky, but then I'm like, wait a minute. It could be true. I better Google it. And it was, because he wanted to know what species of bee was extra tiny. I'm like, there's only one species of bee. Oh, no, wait. I looked it up. There's all these species of honeybees. Small ones, large ones, dark ones, blah, blah. There's a ton of honeybees now, different species. including the small, nice one, which that all came about because a beehive swarm went into a friend of ours is owl box. Instead of owls, they got bees. And so Dave went over there to collect all those bees. They were super friendly bees, unlike the ones that we have in the wall. And they didn't sting at all, even though he was wrangling them out of there. So yeah, I want to get rid of our mean bees and keep that nice hive. In my timeline, we have the third eyes, and stacks were white. I know I've seen them red. What I'm not sure about is if that was the only way I've seen them. I know somebody had repainted them to be red, and I'm like, that looked really familiar. But I wouldn't swear that's the only timeline version I've ever seen. So David Cook is from more like current timeline. He remembers 4 with 1 fake. Somebody else remembers red stripes. I bet there's a lot of versions of that Titanic story. Okay, so next. Okay, celiac disease. Okay, for me, what is it? Maybe around the 90s. Started maybe around the aughts, which is like the 2000s is. Um, you started to hear about people being allergic to wheat, and it was very questionable at first, where they were saying that it was all in their head and it was psychosomatic and they really didn't have a wheat allergy. And then finally, you started to hear that researchers have done intestinal checking and found abnormalities in the intestinal tracts of those who have celiac and like that. Okay, so I don't know. Is that around the time frame you guys remember hearing about celiac, or was there a different time frame? Yeah, blue bees. Yeah, those are an older ME for me, a ways back. They're not the honey kind of bees, though, the blue bees. So, like, when do you, yeah, I remember Recall Vector making a video about Titanic. I should probably dig that up, but, the video has probably changed. When do you remember hearing about celiac disease? That's that thing where people who eat wheat have major intestinal problems and get really sick. I also heard that it was fake and they just wanted money and it was an insurance scam for celiac. Yeah, well, that stuff like that was definitely one of the theories because they didn't really have any evidence things, especially at first. Okay, so in the current timeline, there's a lot of stuff going on with the Nazi war. Okay, how? So apparently in this timeline, it was long known about, and the cause of the illness was discovered during World War II. Celiac goes way back now, way back. There'd be absolutely no reason to question the validity of celiac disease in this timeline because they were dealing with this during World War II. So, how famine under Nazis revealed the cause of celiac. So, they knew that these people were sick, but they didn't know the exact cause. And so, one of it was like this milk cure or something, where basically they found if you eat only this, then you'll get better. But they didn't realize that the problem was gluten for a while. Celiac was often a death sentence. By inflaming the small intestine and causing malnutrition, the disease could irreparably stunt physical growth and mental development. Children with advanced celiac disease had horrifying symptoms: rashes, withered limbs, large swollen bellies, like famine victims. People had been trying to figure it out. They ruled out bacteria. It particularly affected wealthy children. So here's this poor, sad child here, supposedly with chronic intestinal indigestion. Oh, bananas, that was it. The banana diet. One thing that seemed to really work is banana diet. Started promoting bananas as a cure. Well, it kind of makes sense because, I don't know, complex carbohydrates, blah, blah, blah. Of course, bananas have no gluten, so of course if you ate all bananas, you're not eating gluten. Banana companies got behind it. So apparently during this starvation famine period during the Nazis, they ran out of bread, and then these kids got way better, and they finally figured out it was bread that was doing it. So 1950s, they've known about celiac. And even before, they knew about it, but they just didn't know what was causing it. So, I mean, that is not my timeline. There's no way they knew about celiac way back in the Nazi era. There's no way. Peter Blundell fell asleep. I actually like these kind of things where everybody's yapping away, just talking. I actually watch these kind of shows while I'm working because that kind of makes work less boring. So, anyways, yes, celiac earlier than 1950s. 50s is when they figured out it was gluten related. Okay, so next one. All right, I'm trying to just kind of all right, I'm going to do this one next cuz it follows after. Okay, so we've covered before about Germany and the crystal meth addiction. So a while back, for my timeline, they were saying that Hitler was like a morphine addict, and he was this kind of addict, and then it was cocaine. So last I checked, it was crystal meth. I don't remember crystal meth even going back to the Nazi era, and a lot of people also didn't. But in this timeline, yes, not only, though, is what I'm hearing now, not only was Hitler a crystal meth addict for like, I was at least 5 years, he would get crystal meth every day. But now there was a huge program to give all the soldiers crystal meth. So all the soldiers now were fueled on crystal meth. Okay, let's see if I can balance that a little better. So basically their whole army was put on crystal meth. And of course, at first it went pretty well because they had a lot of energy, and they were saying that it made them better fighters and had less empathy for the enemy, and they were more aggressive. But then, as the war ground on, you have side effects where they get, brain problems and paranoia, and their body gets weak, and so now it's like the whole German army basically were on crystal meth. And so now also the story is that we found out that they were on crystal meth by finding some of the pills on some of the soldiers. So then we felt we had to combat their amphetamine use with our own. And so we had all our soldiers in World War II on, what is that thing called? Benzedrine, which Benzedrine is another stimulant that is nicknamed bennies, basically. So it's kind of like a um, meth gives you blue eyes. Yeah, that's it. Um, so apparently now World War II was fought, and all the Americans were on bennies, and all the the Germans were on meth. So that's the new story. Um, you can look up the title of the article. Is there's a bunch of them, but one of them was Nazis dosed soldiers with performance drug. And then they talked about the Allies using also the UK, also all the UK and the Americans, both of them had their peeps on bennies. Leah Broadweather, crystal meth was around back then. Exactly, that's what the ME was last time. We're like, no, we don't remember it being back then. Yeah, opium. Yeah, opium, not crystal meth and bennies. Never heard about celiac before 2000 or so. Yeah, does anybody remember celiac back then? Um, that's just weird. So yeah, so there's celiac and bennies and crystal meth. So the whole war now was like this giant drug war. JFK was in a wheelchair and had to have a meth shot every day just to get out of bed. That's what they're saying about Hitler. They're saying that his private physician would give him a shot of meth every day so he could get out of bed. They're also saying he might have been manic depressive. That's the first I've heard of that one. And that when he was depressive, they'd give him a bunch of meth. I've never heard of Hitler being a depressive, like having depressive tendencies until just like this week. Meth was discovered in 1893 in this timeline. I thought it was the 80s. Yeah, I remember it being sometime in my lifetime where first there was just like opium and on some of these mild LSD things, and then they just were coming out with more and more things, and meth was one of those things. Bottles, couches in the Bible, so no big deal. Next, we read Judas was a meth addict. Sure, and meth grows on trees. Next thing you know. I remember the Japanese air pilots taking meth to be a daredevil. No, I don't remember that. They would do you mean, no, that wasn't in my timeline. Okay, so got that one, got that one. There's a couple of weird ones. Two weird ones and kind of a normal one. Okay, so those are all by me. Now, Holcomb. I am not positive on this one myself, but so many people are flipping a gasket over it. Adding salt to water makes it boil. What does it make it do when it boils? If you add salt to water, how does it affect the boiling rate? Adding salt to water. I have not heard a single person get this one according to current timeline yet. Not saying that won't happen. Next thing you know, Sherlock Holmes will be a meth addict. I'm going to look it up. Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes. Drugs. Holmes occasionally used addictive drugs, especially in the absence of stimulating cases. He sometimes uses morphine and sometimes cocaine, the latter of which he injects in 7% solution. Both drugs were legal in 19th century England. So no meth, just morphine and cocaine. Sherlock Holmes, a junkie. The addictions of Sherlock Holmes. Cocaine would continue to be unregulated in Britain until the passage of the Dangerous Drug Act of 1920. So, Perhaps he was a cocaine addict in this timeline. Meth comes next, but we're starting with cocaine. Boils quicker. Quicker. Uh-oh, Oliver Henry, you might be the odd man out. Boils faster, boils later. Okay, and Shari boils later. Seriously? Okay. I'm pretty sure I remember boils faster, but in this timeline it boils slower. So boils later would be the same as boils slower. So you two are with the current timeline. Assuming you haven't learned of the ME recently and know it from cheating, you are current timeline. A lot of us remember it faster. And I wasn't quite going to put this on, but then Julie Holcomb said she was like a chef. And I mean, if she doesn't know what salt does to water for boiling, then who isn't going to know? So I just figured, yeah, I really thought it was faster, but now I get chefs and stuff saying that it was faster. Coke is the best toothache medicine. What kind of Coke are we talking about here? Boils faster. Yeah, so it doesn't boil faster anymore. And here's the weird thing is that when I was typing it in, I just wrote salt makes water boil. And then you could see that the number one choice is faster. And in fact, when I first did this, slower was not even on here. So faster is more typed in than slower. And now it's salt makes water boil faster. Myth, there's no salt makes water boil slower myth. There's only a salt makes water boil faster myth. So they're basically saying that, let me just read it because the new timeline stuff is just hard for me to stuff into my brain sometimes. It doesn't make much of a difference. When salt is added, it makes it harder for the water molecules to escape from the pot and enter the gas phase, which happens when water boils. This gives salt water a higher boiling point, so it boils slower. I don't really get it, though. Salt water isn't as resistant to changing temperature as fresh water is. Put another way, less heat is required to increase the salt water's temperature by 1 degree. The temperature of salt water will get hotter faster than that of pure water, but it still has a higher boiling point, and the mass is still greater when you add salt to the same volume of water, so that doesn't mean that the salt water boils faster. But the story changes if you have the same volume of water. That is, if you fill a pot with less water and more salt. The 100 grams of water in pot A has a higher heat capacity, meaning that it requires a substantial amount of energy to bring this water to a boil. In contrast, the salt in pot B has now dissolved, and dissolved salt has a lower heat capacity than pure water does. Moreover, pot B has only 80 grams of water, meaning it has less water to heat up than pot A. 20% salt water will heat up almost 25% faster than pure water. Okay, yeah, but that's not what really happens when you add salt, because you don't take out as much salt as you add. Okay, so anyways, it's old myth now that adding salt makes it boil faster, which is the main point of the story. Sometimes it's these little ones that freak people out more. An Australian woman on a live stream didn't know the Mandela effect and was shocked she never heard of Australian animal named the quoll. Her reaction was funny. I'm seeing it all the time. I mean, I see people on the flat earth going, how come I don't remember the moon looking like that? How come that star looks so bright, that whatever that Venus star is so bright. I swear it's brighter every month. Um, so yeah, Australians can't believe they didn't know about their own animals. Um, this guy that studies vaccine law can't believe that he didn't know about this giant vaccine lawsuit from 2 years ago. Um, I remember the wombat, but it was not what it is now. That's right. Um, what's that little it's not the ostrich. It's that little one that now has like all the colors on its head and the giant. That thing was like a plain gray bird in my old timeline. Now it's like this ridiculous murder bird of bright colors. We always boil salt water for cooking rice, so it has not changed. So you're trying to make the rice cook slower when you add the salt. Just use salt to boil today. Uh-oh. It's faster for me. I still put salt on when boiling water. By habit, induction cooktop is even quicker. Yeah, well, you're slowing down your boiling now, apparently. I'm just going to use salt just in case we switch back and forth for flavor. I don't, I don't know. I know. I don't. The physics stuff doesn't seem as flip-floppy, though. The little single detail things are flip-floppy, but the physics seems more directional. It's sort of like the biology changes are very directional. You don't flip back to having your old kind of bone structure. So that seems very orderly. Wombat. Let's look up wombats. I did have wombats, but... Whoop. No. A lot of the old animals have changed. Cows have changed a lot for me. They kind of freak me out a little bit. They're cute. They're a lot. They were more like meh looking. See, they're really cute in this timeline. They look like little Pokemons. This timeline has a lot of little cute Pokemon animals. They were kind of ugly and scungy looking, the old wombats for me. Okay, so and I'll give the grosser one first. So I did cover a while back that there was I was suspicious. It's not like I could swear I know it wasn't there, but there was they were using human skins. Like there was some kind of legend that if you used a human skin pants, that you would give you like the power of the other guy or something. So I don't know. There's a lot of weird, creepy stuff like that in this timeline. So I found another one, and it is anthropodermic bibliopegi. So any of you book fans, anthropodermic bibliopegi. So what is anthropomorphic bibliopegi? That is when they use human skin to bind books. There was even one that I've heard of that was supposed to have some human skin. So they're finding that some of the old books are bound in human skin, apparently in this timeline, and it has a word. It's called anthropodermic bibliopegi. I'm having trouble getting that one in my head. Some old medical books. One of them mentioned something from Johns Hopkins University, which is a Mandela for many, as we remember John Hopkins. Where was that book that I'd heard of too? College of Physicians of Philadelphia owns 3 anthropodermic books. 3 were bound in the skin of one woman. They have the largest collection. Oh, Dale Carnegie's Lincoln the Unknown is supposed to be partially bound in the skin of a human. I've never heard of any of it. Anyway, there's also some kind of rumors of some early law books of history being bound in human skin. Keep an eye on this one because I wonder if this is going to be another one of those where there's more and more examples of it. Because first there was that weird human skin clothing, and now we've got these books. All right, so that one's like the more creepiest of the creeps. I have one left, I believe. It was only in 2 hours and 15 minutes. It's going to be a new record for this year. Goofy was a cow? No, Goofy was a cow? Goofy was a cow. Or a dog. Goofy was a dog. Oh my God. Goofy is a cow? Oh my God. Goofy does look more like a cow. Goofy is not a dog. Oh my. Who found that one? Was that you? Or did you hear it somewhere? Is it on like one of the other channels? I don't want to go on and on about it if someone's already covered it, but so Goofy was a cow. No, that's so wrong. I'm going to look at these. I'm looking at some of these old images. See, and this one, wait a minute. That doesn't look like Goofy, though. This is funny. So Goofy's got little horns in some of these now. See, it does look more like a cow with that bell and the big snoozles. But like, see, that looks like a cow, but this is not a cow nose here. That's a dog nose. So Goofy was supposed to be a cow, but it had a dog nose. Yeah, see, there's a cow nose, there's a dog nose. That's just wrong. That's so wrong. What kind of dog is Goofy? G.G. Goofy Goof. A-list Dippy Dog, George G. Geef Goofus, D-Dog, Goofy G, and Goofy Super Goof. Species, anthropomorphic dog. Okay, so what? Goofy was always a cow, but nobody knew. Now, a lot of these places are still saying it's a dog. Goofy debuted in animated cartoons starting in 1932 with Mikey's Review as Dippy Dog, who is older than Goofy would come to be. Later the same year, he was reimagined as a younger character now called Goofy. All right, well, if he was introduced as Dippy Dog, then how can he be a cow? The timeline itself doesn't make sense. the risk of visiting Snopes, which sucks so bad in this timeline. While some might argue that Goofy is actually a cow and not a dog, the popular character can most accurately be described as a cartoon. Oh, thank you, Snopes. You are so helpful. All right, Snopes is calling false on this rumor. Mm-mm-mm. Does Goofy's old love interest Clarabelle the cow prove that Goofy is also a cow? Okay, so perhaps not. Okay, I don't know. Can't trust anything, but apparently not. Apparently, Goofy is still considered a dog. Yeah, donated skin. Yeah, I don't know. People do die, so I wouldn't have been that hard to get skin. Oliver Henry's off. Yeah, I'm almost done, so you only have to rewatch the last little snippet if you so desire. Okay, so the last one is all right, so I found that one, and this one is found by Banis Ray, commenter on the channel. Good find. Wait, open another one. Okay, this was not done in my old timeline because they couldn't grow the nerves back together. But apparently, oh, this is the one from Johns Hopkins. This is the one. Okay. So apparently in this timeline since it's like 20 years ago or something, since 1999. So 21 years ago almost, they've done arm and hand transplants. And this is what's weird, okay? They are able to get these transplants to operate. So in my timeline, they didn't do that because you just have a dead arm hanging. You know, it might have blood in it, but it wouldn't operate. It wouldn't, move. So what's the point? So in this timeline, if you transplant, isn't that gross? You can transplant arms or hands from a donor, assumingly that person died. And then they do work very hard to get a good match. But they can stick them back together and they can stitch these nerves together, and the nerves will grow back together and then function. Now, of course, you have to do like a whole bunch of hours and months of physical therapy to retrain the hand to operate and stuff, but it can operate later. Like it can, the nerves can work. The nerves of your arm will now work with the donor arm. They'll grow together and they'll work. That wasn't the case in my old timeline, but so Banis Ray found this one, and yeah, since 1999, they do have to do a little immunosuppressive because it is a donor organ, but they didn't have that. Oh, can't sleep me today. So either hand or arm, and it will function. They've got the images of this person here. That's donor arm and hand. It looks weird because that guy's hand was bigger than that guy, I guess. um, a different color of tan. Um, so you could get that thing to work apparently now. They just have to do physical therapy and I have never seen anything like that. I just have no. They didn't do it before because the hand wouldn't operate. Uh, I'm just tripping out. The good find. But we've already seen that the cells are more compatible across different humans now. It used to be if you got a foreign cell in your body, then your immune system would just kill that cell. But now apparently they could just kind of plant in there and keep on trucking. You get cells from your if you were in the womb with a twin or a fraternal twin, you'll get cells from that person in you. You've got cells from your mother in you. Your mother's got cells from you, and they're not killed by your immune system in this timeline. So apparently you can grow these arm muscles back too. Strange. Frankenstein seems feasible. You're right. You're right. You could do that. Um, I don't know about the electricity, but maybe a few more shifts. Yeah, what a trip. It doesn't match. Frankenstein lives. Yeah, yeah. I didn't think of that. And then there's the old ME. Frankenstein used to be the monster, but now it's Frankenstein's monster. A lot of people swear that Frankenstein was the monster, and then somewhere along the line it wasn't the monster. Can probably replant a head now. Yeah, why not? Why not? Nerves can't grow together in my reality. You don't know where those nerves goes to the brain. Yeah, well, I guess they know they connect right here, so they just connect them. But um, they couldn't just connect them back together in my old time. That's why um, once your spinal cord was severed, they couldn't just like get a chunk of spinal cord and patch it back in there and have it work. It wouldn't. And the arm nerves were the same. Once they were severed, they didn't know how to make them go back together. And it's even more creepy because this is not your original nerve. So your nerve is growing in with some other nerve and still communicating. Yeah, no. But yeah, I hadn't even thought about that Frankenstein thing. Just we're just waiting for the electrical jump start. If you've got to have your heart jump started, they do the electrical. So we're almost there. Alien hand syndrome is still freaking me out. Yeah, I noticed Reddit has a whole subreddit for depersonalization disorder. Like, and it's basically like you think the whole world is kind of fake and unreal. I'm like, maybe it is all fake and unreal. Is it still a disorder? So I guess if you think the whole world is fake and unreal, kind of, and that really bothers you, then it is a disorder. But if you're kind of okay with it, then it's not. I, there's a lot of people going, well, this world seems fake and disordered and unreal, and there's this whole subreddit for them. So they just think the problem is them. I'm like, well, we just happen to think the problem is the world. So I guess that makes us really arrogant, but it works. At least I'm not freaking out thinking I have a mental disorder. Yeah, you guys are talking about the mask again. I finally got one of those cloth ones, and it looks cuter because I got one with a little cat nose and whiskers. But up till now, I've been using the N95s with the blowhole in them, which are like really easy to breathe out of. The cloth mask, it smashes onto my face, and then I feel like it's hard to talk because you're moving your lips, and it distorts my speech a lot more with that tight mask on there. The N95s are like a bulb away from your face, so it's not, so it really is kind of like deters me from speaking when I use those cloth ones. So it's kind of interesting that somehow, and maybe it's not a coincidence, we've gotten railroaded into using non real masks, like cloth ones. I'm like, there are a million and one masks available from China now, that you could get surgical masks or KN95s or whatever, but they're still pushing this cloth mask thing. Oh no, save the other ones for the hospital. The hospitals will not use construction masks, because they're not individually packaged. They won't use the KN95s because they're not CDC approved. There is absolutely no reason why the average man can't get those masks instead of the cloth ones, but they're pushing these cloth ones still, even though it makes no sense at all. And the cloth ones just smash on your face. It's just, I don't know. This whole world just makes no sense. I mean, there was stuff like this before, but it's just gotten a lot worse. I used to really wonder about it, but why certain things were so illogical. But now I'm like, you know what? Everybody's in a dream trance or something. It almost just, I'm. It's easier for me to tolerate it now because I just go, okay, everybody's just brainwashed dream trance. I thought he had bolts in the head and neck. Yeah, that's another ME. Neck bolts for me. Let's just see what Frankenstein's bolts look like. They'd moved to the head last I checked. It's been a while though. Frankenstein monster. Oh, he's got, that one has some neck bolts. For me, he had neck bolts only. All right, so oh, the bolts are back. The bolts are back. Almost all of them have bolts now. Now they're a little smaller and not as impressive as I recall. Okay, so for me, he had the neck bolts, but no head bolts. And it was more like this. They were pretty hefty. Then it had switched to the forehead ones and no neck ones. So what do we got now? Let's look at the original one and see. And also mine did not have these head staples. Those are kind of creepy. Wow, it looks like we've gone back to the bolts, the neck bolts. Okay, so he's got the neck bolts and they're back. Those are a little bit more finely polished looking. The neck bolts that I remember were a little bit more industrial looking, but all right. Now he still has the staples. There were no staples in my own timeline. So yeah, that was the question. Is I believe that there was mostly some head bolts and the staples were the ones last I checked, and the neck bolts are gone. But it looks like the neck bolts are back. That's interesting. And the staples, I did not have the staples. So for a while there were a lot of forehead bolts in some of these images, but the main images had the staples. So it looks like in some timelines it was neck bolts, in some timelines it was forehead bolts. This timeline has those staples. They're definitely different now than the last time I checked the staples, though. They're bigger, for one. Huh. Okay, so that's kind of a flip-flop. Interesting. I saw a lady working out in the park with a mask on. Bad for the heart. Well, it's lowers your oxygenation and it is harder on the body, definitely. I'm so lost. We used to have organ transplant, but we didn't have arm transplant. I would have thought the heart would have been harder and you can do one without the other. The thing with the arm transplant is you could stick it on there and you could get the blood going, but you couldn't move it. And so you just had this dead arm that flopped around and fell on everything. And it was more of a hassle than it was worth. So for organs, you just have to hook up the blood flow, but they didn't have, like, nerves weren't required to make it operate so much. It kind of operated on its own. So I'm not sure if that's true now. There might be more nerve connections, but that was the main reason because you could stick the arm on, but it wouldn't operate. So now it can be made to function and be a useful arm. So I guess it would be worth sticking one on there if you could get it to function. How long before it be where somebody shoots somebody for not wearing a mask? Yeah, I'm sure it's coming. We've already had these really nasty police brutalities all over the world, supposedly due to not wearing a mask. The thing is, those things, though, they say it due to not wearing a mask, but it's really this that somebody is a violent jerk who wants to beat the crap out of somebody, and the mask is an excuse. Nobody violently injures anybody for not wearing a mask. They violently injure them because they hate them and they have an anger management problem and they're a violent person. That is the real reason. Get a 3M respirator for painting cars or demolition. Yeah, they don't stop you from spreading germs though, because I've covered this one. Do I still have it here? I think I put it away. Yeah, I think I put it back in the car, but I had it, at least the cool flow ones, those have a little cat flap there in the front and the vent, and when you breathe hard, it will pop open and let all your germy air spread out across the lands. So those 3M masks are fine for filtering incoming air, but they suck for filtering exhaled air, and they will. So again, the whole storyline that you wear a mask to protect other people will not make sense if you're wearing a 3M Cool Flow model number 8511, approved by the CDC for the job, because the air just goes out unfiltered if you huff a little bit. It's only good for inhale filtration. So the whole thing is ridiculous that they would approve those masks of that model number with the storyline they have in place. Makes no sense at all. But yeah, there's this timeline when some middle-aged girl who ships internet items for a living can figure stuff out better than the CDC. We are all in deep caca, very deep caca, or on some kind of a weird track, which I think has to be it, because although I can easily expose these logic errors, I mean, something is keeping this earth functioning, and that thing that is keeping this mess somehow toddling along must have vast intelligence. So I don't want to say I'm smarter than the universe, because I sure as heck am not. But whatever logic stream is going on, I mean, it is third grade level or worse on a lot of this stuff. At least the public logic stream. Anyone remember front rib cage to sternum made of cartilage? Yep. It was basically open in the front. There wasn't much in the front. The ribs would just come like this, and then the front, and they would crack the ribs, which was they would grab them and crack them and pull them back, and it would make a cracking noise to access the heart. So they would crack the rib cage, and I have run into some old timers who still remember that. And it's interesting when you hang out with people, you can tell if they're affected because they'll start using these old terms. Remember when you used to, and he even said it, I used to have to, crack the rib cage, and he would go like this. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what they do. But they don't do that anymore. Now they saw out some of the little rib bones and they access it through the little window that they made. And it's been that way, as far as I can tell, for a really long time, because there's never been access through the front. But that guy remembered something that makes no sense for this timeline. There's no reason for him to have said that unless he remembered the old timeline. And there was a couple other things he also said. This guy I was camping with, this old timer guy. Our rights are being taken away and it's all bullshit. Yeah. I do agree with you and it really bugs me, but on the other hand, I think there's a lot more going on than this fake virus thing or even the fear porn of the New World Order. I think there's probably a lot of timeline shifting going on. I think there's a lot going on under there. A lot more than any side could guess. So I think that might be the real reason for it. Deep down, underneath all of it. You can get the ones without the vents, though. That's the ones people should be using. Yeah, if you're really worried about spreading a virus, use that one. However, the cool flow ones are very good for breathing. I find those the most comfortable because they're not smashed on your mouth. So you've got a pocket of air and the carbon dioxide goes out quickly. And also it doesn't build up as much heat. They really are cool flow. So when it's hot, I mean, they're the shizzle. Well, they're not as good as actual ordinary air, but they are better, my feeling, than the cloth ones. I really feel kind of like they're really impinging on my airways. Exercise with a mask outside in the heat. Yeah, they're not requiring masks unless you're within 6 foot of someone else. And so there is no effing way I'm going to be wearing one out by myself while I'm exercising. They did not shut it down over HIV and Ebola. Yeah, I know. It's just, there's something going on, but it's more than, I really do think it's something deep. Something about the shift. They won't let the dentists open their practice because they don't know how to keep the distance. Well, you're not going to be able to look down someone's mouth and keep a 6-foot distance, but you can certainly wear a mask. And in fact, I do seem to recall that dentists already were wearing masks for that kind of thing. All right, anyways, it's getting late. It's the government working their agenda. See, now I totally understand why you would assume that, because you could totally see there's some fishy business with the sea. But so then who are you going to blame but the stupid government? But I really think there's something underneath all that. Even you got the fear porn of dying of the sea, then you got the fear porn of the global takeover. I suspect that underneath that there's maybe timeline splitting. So I think different things will come out of this. I do think we're going to have to go through the biblical story, though. I think there's going to be the mark of the beast and this. And I think we're going to see some stuff. But I think it's going to be, it's a movie. It's on the screen. You don't have to get sucked into it. I think almost everybody is in pretty good shape to that I know. And it seems like most of my listeners, I mean, I certainly feel sorry for anybody who's hurting for money and stuff. But I don't know. I think there's more to it than just the assumptions. And that's why I'm not getting sucked into the fear porn. I think this is a story we got to go through, and there'll be the splitting. We'll go sometime. Think of the good timelines you want to get to and what you want to see come out of this, and I think you could get there. We might have to go through some stuff, but I think we can get there. Okay, so anyways, yes, it is time for me to go. I'm going to try to get to bed by 3 o'clock in the morning. I now know where the end button is. You guys have helped me out a lot. Came up with some good stuff. I got a lot of good stuff off of Retcon this time, and a lot of good stuff off of the commenters on the channel. So I appreciate it very much. Keep calm, keep cool. We'll get through this. I think we're gonna live through interesting times, but I think we'll be all right. So, concentrate on the timeline you want to get into. It might be a little bit of a ride before we get there, but I think we can get there. So, think good thoughts, everyone. This is Eva signing off for Once Upon a Timeline.